up, guys? It's your boy Daniel back with another brand new episode of Maximum Intelligence. It's me. It's your co-host Eli. You're listening to us talk about the most intelligent, crazy things in the world. You are tuned into a podcast with the two most intelligent people.
We want to apologize to the audience in advance for the sections of the conversation that you will not be able to understand or comprehend, being that you just simply aren't big brain enough. I will say
IQ is not high enough.
It sounded like you needed to lower your microphone gain during that intro, but it might have just been because you were yelling, so it might be fine now.
It probably was, yeah.
Yeah, but it was some
I was yelling
stuff.
Pretty loud. I was actually so excited.
Dude,
you know
you hyped me up. I was just sitting here. I'm higher energy now. My heart rate increased.
Woo.
Speaking of audio,
as soon as
Yep, sorry. The last episode of this, the very first episode, our production team recorded the audio wrong, and I was super quiet, and it was kind of garbo, but that problem's fixed. They wanted us to let you know that problem has been resolved. So this episode should be better.
Yep. Our huge production team wanted to apologize and wanted us to tell you guys that they were sorry. We actually had to lay off a couple of people.
We laid off a few people, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I was wondering if we should even say that, but I think it'd be better to just kind of set the precedent for everyone else. So
yeah, because if anyone messes up on this podcast, like even if guests mess up, it's just immediately fired.
You're out. Yep. Speaking of guests, I like the idea of eventually having more people on. Maybe not for a while, or maybe the next episode. Could be at any point. But I do think that bringing in more personalities could, while it will lower the IQ of the whole vibe overall, we can get some more entertaining personalities in here. So
yeah, it'll bring us from like the 4-digit IQ into the 3-digit, which is like, ooh,
yeah,
cringe.
Yeah, but hopefully we'll bring their IQ up for them being around us.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone ever listened to this podcast, I think they would be a smarter person. So I think
100%.
Even being on the podcast would be that times like at least 11.
That's
right?
a good point. It'd have to be a lot.
It was just like quick calculations. That was like quick.
No, I trust it. That's got to be it. It's got to be something like that. I was getting there. Admittedly, you got there before me, but that's kind of where I was going. So
yeah, we're smart in different ways. That's fine. All right, here's the first question for the podcast. Can money buy happiness? What do you think?
Can money? Well, there's the classic joke. I'm not sure if you've heard it, but there's the money can't buy happiness, but I'd rather cry in a Lamborghini. So the point being, even if I'm sad either way, of course, money isn't going to make me more sad. But I think there's genuine psychological evidence that people with a lot of money, it magnifies aspects of their personality, if that makes sense. Like an example is someone who plays the lottery would have to be someone that's already bad at money. And when they win money, the bankruptcy statistics are just crazy because they've won millions of dollars, and then within the next 5 years, they're poorer than they were before they won the lottery. And so there's some things like that. But
crazy.
One thing, though, that I think is maybe a good argument for money buying happiness is that it seems like happiness has got to be greatly associated with meaning, wouldn't you think? Like having meaning in your life or doing something fulfilling.
Okay. Personally, I think there's a difference between happiness and joy, because I think happiness is a very circumstantial thing, but joy can come from not your circumstances. But that's kind of the one that a lot of people say is that's found within that kind of thing, or your beliefs can give you joy, even if you're in bad circumstances. So I think in one way, I would say it meaning, your meaning wouldn't really give you happiness; it would more give you joy.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Meaning is.
I mean, I would never even say happiness is the point of life, or that you shouldn't strive to be happy. That's never gonna like you said, it's a fleeting emotional thing. It's not really some foundational thing you can get. But what my point was is I feel like obviously money is just opportunity, right? The more money you have, the more possibilities and ability and opportunity you have in your life, right? I think that's one of the reasons some people strive to, I want to have tons of money. Because you have ability, you can travel, you can manipulate people, you can buy more things, you can do all kinds of things like that, right? But maybe if you were to use your money because it gives you ability to find meaning, or using your money to either experiencing things that can help you find meaning, or using it to learn certain things like buying classes or not having to work so you can spend your time on hobbies and different things like that, then maybe it can lead to finding joy or like that deeper happiness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I would agree. I think the opportunities that it gives you is like a really big deal. But what about this counter argument? I think even at my level of wealth, like I'm not the most rich person, I'm only the smartest person, right? I still would say that I almost have like limitless opportunities. Even in this day, there's so many things that I could go do. Right?
Yeah, but if you were to somehow
obviously there's more if I was rich, but the argument that I'm trying to make is basically you can't get more than infinite. So there technically are more, but if I had infinite opportunities right now, right, to go out and just do some random stuff that could be super fun, do you think it matters though if you have more opportunities if you're rich?
Yeah, the reason I would say that it does actually help is right now, let's say you had incredible amounts, right? I'm talking not even millions, but maybe billions, right? I feel like the amount of your life that you're going to be able to remember, I know this is a weird argument. I always use this argument. I've never heard anyone else phrase it like this, but I've found myself forgetting stuff that's mundane. Any of my normal routine stuff or like sections of my life where I've spent months going through a normal routine, I just forget it. It doesn't get retained. And things of emotional significance, like really bad things or really good things, obviously I remember that, right? And I feel like with insane amounts of money, you would be spending your time doing crazy, weird things, you know, like, I don't know, like having yacht races or driving tanks over cars, just weird, random, I don't know, I'm not saying that's what I would do, just stuff like that, though, I feel like is going to be more memorable, and you're going to have more things you did in your life that you're going to have remembered, and that's going to just make you a more well-rounded person. And that's not really using your money to find meaning. That's more just total play. You know what I mean?
Okay, but do you think that at this moment, like let's say you stood up from your desk and then you're like, I'm going to make today super memorable, right? But I'm not going to spend that much money. Like I'm going to be like balling on a budget. That's it. You know, like spend what I would spend in a day. Like let's say $30. I'm not going to spend any more than $30. So you could like fuel up on on gas. You could go buy some stuff from the store, but it's not like a really expensive thing, right?
Okay.
But do you think that you could stand up and choose to make today be memorable and for it to actually be memorable? Because I wholeheartedly do. I think I could get up right now or after we're done recording this podcast, walk out of my room and be like, I'm going to make today really memorable. Might be bad, might be good.
I think it would definitely be a lot harder to do that on that small of a budget.
I would agree.
Yeah, that's
I don't think it would be that hard because I've done that all the time. I mean, even like 2 weeks ago, I was at a movie with Jarrett, and it was not super memorable. But we were driving home, and I had work the next day. I had to get up at 5, and I think we were driving home at maybe like 10 something. And we had watched the movie with my sister and a bunch of like her friends. And we're just like, yo, let's go to the pie. And I kind of like said it as a joke. And then Jared's like, yeah, let's do it. And I was, wait, really? He's like, yeah, let's do it. And then he started like trying to convince me. He's like, okay, think about it. In 10 years from now, what are you going to remember more? Are you going to remember you being tired tomorrow morning? Or are you going to remember going to the pie?
I use that argument so much, so often.
I do too. I use it a lot. And Rand uses it all the time. And it's just an intelligent argument to make. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Let's go to the pie. So at like 10:30 at night, we ended up going to the pie. And then getting there, ordered pizza, invited all of my sister and her friends, and only like 6 of them showed up. And we had like a bunch of people just eating at the pie. It was like super memorable, like a really good time. And I got to like hang out with a lot of her friends instead of just like sitting there in a movie theater watching a movie.
That's super
and that was
dope.
really dope.
Yeah. So I don't think.
I was just saying, I don't think you need a lot of money to do something like that. Because I mean, that entire night costed me like $15 maybe 20.
Costed.
But that was, costed is a really intelligent word to say.
Yep.
Yeah, that became a very memorable thing. And I do agree that it would be harder to make it memorable and to some degree, but I don't think it's anywhere next to like impossible for me to not spend a lot of money and have a super memorable night.
So is this whole conversation about how much can money correlate to how memorable your experiences are? Is that the point? Or how many memorable
I was
experiences
just bouncing off of what you were saying is that you said it kind of felt like it can.
But I think that example, though, is something that could have easily also happened if you had unlimited money in that situation. You know what I mean? That is that's one of those ones. And then if you had less money, if you were homeless or something, you probably wouldn't have done that at all. And so there is also an argument for...
There's a difference between having no money, I'm low class. I'm lower class in America, right?
Okay, good point.
But I do have money that I can spend. Mm-hmm. Everyone has money they can spend in America if you are a normal person, not homeless. That's going to sound really bad.
Okay.
Like, homeless people aren't normal people.
Yeah, we're only talking about normal people here. So I get it. I think you can, obviously we both agree, you can go have very memorable experiences on a smaller budget. But I think that with an infinite budget, it's definitely not only easier, but there's so many more things you can do that you wouldn't be able to otherwise, right? And when it comes to happiness or like that deeper like fulfillment and satisfaction out of life, I think that comes through meaning, and I feel like that is way more easy to find with a larger budget. Finding your meaning, I think, is a lot easier to obtain.
Meaning? I don't know about that. I think people that have no money can find their meaning.
I do too. I'm just saying it's easier. I just think it's easier.
Why is it easier to find your meaning? Maybe we should define meaning.
Yeah, we probably should. Finding some... Dang, I don't know. That's a very deep question.
I would say meaning, like your meaning is what you are on Earth to do. Basically. Yeah, but it's almost like your purpose of life.
But I mean it in a way where even someone coming from an atheist perspective can get it.
And you can still answer that. Saying that an atheist couldn't answer their purpose for life, that's a weird argument. But I would say if I was an atheist or if I was a nihilist, then I would say that my purpose in life is to have fun, enjoy my life, and that's it.
Yeah, but I'm saying some people listening might be under the impression I wasn't meant to do anything in life. I didn't come here for a purpose. I'm just here. So what does Eli mean by meaning?
Meaning and purpose that's not the definition of that word doesn't mean that you have to have someone giving you that.
Okay, here's what I mean by meaning. Here's the best way I think I would word it. Doing something, you by finding your meaning, you have found something that you can put your time into that makes the negative aspects of life still you can still bear them. Does that make sense? You're doing something worthwhile enough to you that it offsets any negative part of your life. You're happier and it's more worth living than not living because of this thing you found that you can do, right? So it's an action. It's maybe a creative endeavor or maybe a hobby or something that offsets all the tragedy, right? And so that is kind of what I mean by meaning, is finding whatever that thing is for you. And so maybe that is your purpose. That's why you're here. Or maybe that's whatever, right? Different ways of wording it, but that's kind of what I mean, is to offset the badness in a larger way. And so I think that you can obviously find that on even no budget because everyone's different and everyone's going to have a different thing that gives them that fulfillment, right? A different activity. But I guess maybe it's just the way I spend money. Maybe this argument only works for me because when I imagine an unlimited budget, I imagine that I'm never working, right? I'm never doing something I have to be doing, but I am spending my time in stuff like going to classes to learn instruments and taking flight lessons and skydiving and setting up trips for all my friends to go to the Amazon. That's kind of how I imagine my life. And I feel like through living like that, you're going to find some activity or some like service you're providing to people, or some type of entertainment service or something you're doing that, you know, makes you feel like, dang, I can do this, and it's so fun that time, like, not necessarily fun, but it's so worth doing to me that time just flies by when I do this thing. So yeah, you can find that without money, but I just think that may be a way money could buy happiness. But through this conversation, I've realized that might just be subjective to how I would spend money. You know what I mean?
I think that's fair. I think the ability to find something that like is your calling, like, oh, this is what I was meant to do, kind of as your meaning.
Yeah.
I think you have more opportunities to find that, and you have like it maybe even more free time because of you don't have to work, and you don't have to do all these little things that take up time in your life. So you have more time to pursue all of these meaningful things. So I in one way, I would say, yes, it is easier, but there are things that would almost like make it harder, because like you find a lot of rich people that are depressed.
Oh,
and
dude,
I think
I think the best argument for why money can't buy happiness is that suicide rates, like worldwide, seem to be a privilege of the highest upper class. Like people committing suicide is it's way higher. Dude, I can't think of any of my words. It's way more common among rich people.
I just watched a video. It was about how Finland is the happiest country, and they said that exact thing was suicide is a privilege for
the upper class,
like wealthy people. Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it was like, bro, that's actually true, because they were talking about how in the United States, the wealthiest states and wealthy communities are the ones with super high suicide rates.
Yeah.
Which is like bonkers, dude.
Do you think this is a theory? Wow. I don't have like this isn't a study or evidence for this. I have a theory. Do you think the reason that came to be is because growing up in America and the culture here and like the whole idea of the American dream is to hit this point where it's almost like a checklist, where if you make a decent amount of money, if you own your own house, if you have a wife and you own a car, you know, and all this basic stuff, and you're set up, then that is somehow like you've done it, like you've hit that point. Yep. And then people do that and they realize, what the heck, I've hit this point and I still am not happy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you might have these people that invented some new technology or developed software, and they move to Silicon Valley and they're making tons of money, and they buy a house in Beverly Hills and they're sitting there, and suddenly they're like, I've finally done it. And for some reason there's still a void, and then they just commit suicide because they don't know what else to do. They're like, I did the whole thing. I checked off everything on the checklist. Why do I not feel that joy? And so they just kill themselves, because where else do you go from there? And so I think that might be caused from the culture of, you know, the weird checklist that you're supposed to hit in America. Do you think that's what it could be caused by?
I would say to some extent, yes. But I would say, like, personally, and I don't have experience of hitting like my top tier goals, but you can get depressed by like for so many different things. And I think it's a lot of other reasons that play into it, but something about being even just like financially stable, because it wasn't even just talking about the extreme upper class, but it was like, because they talked about like the suicide belt, and then even like the Midwest, like when we're like Midwest in Utah, mm-hmm. And Utah has like one of the highest suicide rates. And I think it's not just because we're these super wealthy. We are a wealthy area, though, and for some reason that leads to a lot of people killing themselves.
Yeah,
which is super weird to think about.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I personally think that it's a meaning crisis. It's the definition of meaning I was talking about earlier. It's people not finding what activity it is they could do or service they could provide that offsets the awful parts of being alive. You know what I mean? There has to be something that offsets that, because the only alternative is there's just too much sadness in your life. If it's too negative, then of course it's like, well, I got to escape. I got to get out of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I would also say, coming from like a very like Christian perspective, I think a lot of it to some degree is not knowing what like truth is, and having this like void inside that a lot of people feel. And this is not to say that Christians can't get depressed or like kill themselves, but there's some disconnection of like objective truth, in my opinion, even though we will disagree on what objective truth is.
Yeah. But don't you think you could know? Never mind. That gets into that. Never mind. I was going to say something about, like, even if you know the truth, if you don't have something to offset how bad life is, don't you think you would still be tempted to try to kill yourself?
But it's a weird phrase.
Yeah, because then it gets into whatever. Because if your definition of objective truth is something that includes something that does offset the sadness of life, then you wouldn't kill yourself. And so I can't really use that phrasing, I guess. Speaking of, there was something I just started doing since our last podcast this week that has had a surprising effect on my whole life, I feel like. And what happened was this. There was one night where Trinity was at work, and all the kids had just gone to sleep. My mom was gone. They both work night shift, so I was essentially home alone. The kids were asleep, right, but I was chilling. Right. And for no reason that I could really, like, quantify, I started feeling pretty, like, down, like low self-esteem. You know what I mean? I was just like, and it was weird because it reminded me how long it's been since I felt like that. It was like I was like, dang, I forgot about this emotion. You know what I mean? I was like, it's been a long time since I felt like that. And it started bringing back, like, just like where I was in life last time I felt like that. And I was like, it started making me feel grateful it'd been so long, but I was also trying to, like, analytically figure out what had happened either that day or that night that put me in that mindset. You know what I mean? I was like, what is it? And I couldn't figure out what it was. I just simply couldn't figure it out. And so then I was like, okay, well, I can't figure out what did it. How can I undo it? And I was trying to figure out I was like, should I try to make myself feel good? Should I try to just build my self-esteem? And I was like, I don't think when you're in that mindset, it's kind of hard to switch, you know, and start just trying to compliment yourself and stuff. So I was just like, I don't know. I'm just going to try to distract myself with work or something I feel like I should be doing. And the stuff I would normally do that I feel is productive was not anything that, like, an example might be editing videos or, you know, balancing my budget, like that stuff that I feel like I'm actually getting something done. And I just didn't want to do any of that. And so I was laying in bed and I was like, what's something that maybe is productive that I keep feeling like I should start doing and I just haven't started doing? You know how everyone I feel like has a list like that? And one was, I started kind of thinking about this podcast. That is one where I would normally feel productive, yeah. But I was thinking about our podcast and how one of the goals I set for you is having clearly defined long-term goals. And so I was thinking about mine for whatever reason. I was like, I feel like I have these long-term goals, but they're not very specific or defined. You know, like I could say, I want to be this, or I want to start college at this point. But I feel like if it's not even more broken down and specified, like specific dates when I should start doing stuff, or like at least general, like in this amount of time, start doing this, or, you know, if I'm still doing this job by this point, is that too long? Should I make sure I switch by this point? You know, just kind of specifying it more. So I was thinking about that, and then that led me to remembering this this website that Jordan Peterson made. I don't know if he's going to come up every single podcast, but it's called Self-Authoring. And the reason I thought about it is because he said that they made a list of big universities make all of their students take it at one point. So thousands and thousands of students took it, and they found a super tight correlation between the amount of writing that someone did in that self-authoring program and their likeliness to let me word it different. They found a correlation between the students that were doing not very good in school at that point, like they had lower grades or lower ambition, you know, they were kind of projected to drop out soon, and then taking this course, they ended up, like, their whole grades and their whole attitude and everything switched, and they started doing way better. And that wasn't really an expected result of it either. That was just one of the analytics. That was like the largest piece of information they gathered from the whole study. So I was like, well, what is that self-authoring program then? So I got on the program and I was looking at it that night, and it was super weird because I could go into how it's all laid out and stuff, but just to summarize it, where it starts is you have to write about your current faults like the things you consider to be a fault in your personality, and the parts of you that and it's important that it's not objectively what's a fault, but it's what that person considers their fault to be, because that's a different thing. You know what I mean? And so you write about what you consider your faults to be, and it's broken down easily. Like there's check boxes. Do you have any of these faults? And you check them or don't check them. Do you have any of these faults? And it goes through like 200 faults. And then it goes, okay, these are the ones you checked. So now rank order them from the one you feel like is most negatively affecting your life and the one that is least negatively affecting your life. So I rank ordered them. And then it was like, all right. And then it had this little paragraph area where you type, little text box. And it was talking about, like a specific question about that fault. Like, what is a certain time where this fault had a bad effect on your life or whatever. Anyway, so I started writing it, and then a couple days after that, I got on and wrote for like another hour. I probably put like 4 or 5 hours into it. And so far, I haven't gotten past the fault section, but I'm like 80% of the way through the fault section. And I feel like that, like one program alone, like drastically, something about writing it down, because I had heard about, if you physically write something down, your brain retains it better, and you for whatever reason, you remember it better and everything. But anyway, I wrote it all down, and then there's sections that's like, what could you have done differently in that situation to prevent or to minimize the effects from this fault? So then I would write that down. Then it said, what can you do in the future if this fault, is going to affect you? How do you think you can curb it or get around it or not do it, And then, anyway, so I just wrote a ton, dude, about like 4 or 5 different faults I had. I guess not a ton. I've probably written like 3,000 words total by now. But anyway, it was just weird because there was something about doing that where since then I've been living my normal life and then gone, oh, this is that thing. This is that fault, And normally I wouldn't think that. I was like, this is the thing I wrote about, and I said in this situation I would do this. And I also wrote, that's another thing I forgot. That was the biggest part of it, is you also have to write what will happen if you don't get over that fault. Like long term, what are the negative effects of that in your life? And you don't really think about them, but I feel like you can think, like if you tried to, you could think of very, very bad consequences of not fixing that part of your personality. And so, anyway, it was just cool though, because I've never really liked writing at all, but I wrote a ton, and there was something, maybe it's just writing about yourself that's easier to do, right? But I don't know, I'm just excited. I feel like it's going to like have a longer lasting, like positive impact on everything. It was really cool. I would recommend it to everyone. You just go to...
That does sound really cool.
You go to selfauthoring.com, and it's not just about faults. Faults is the first section, and then next is obviously the virtues that you have. But then the third section is called future, and it's all about like clearly defining your future. And that's what made me even think of it that night, is because I was thinking about how I don't have a clearly defined future. And then the last section is your past. It's like building an autobiography of your past. And supposedly there's some psychological benefit to really structuring what you view your past to have been, because then it'll start making you go, oh, this is why I'm this way, or this is why I usually do this, is because that thing happened in my past. And if it's not articulated clearly, then you never look at it from that perspective. But it's cool. I would recommend it. Since then, I started doing a lot of weird things that I've never done. Like when I edit, I start a 1-hour timer, and I stop after 1 hour, and I don't edit more than that. And one of the faults that I had was not starting new projects. Like I'm very unlikely to initiate a new project. And I felt like one of the reasons that I put for that was that the stuff that I do get fulfillment out of, I just keep doing that because obviously I'm getting fulfillment out of it. But then the problem is I can edit for like 6 or 7 hours in one day, and there's no void really of having wasted time, but I'm only going to be good at editing and nothing else eventually, So I keep stopping after 1 hour, and it's been cool because now I've actually read, mostly because that was one of the New Year's resolutions, right, was reading, but I felt like it would have been unlikely if I hadn't made myself stop editing those few days. And just different things like that. I found time I went on a big date with Trinity at one point. I would have done that anyway, but I don't know. I feel like it was I just highly recommend it, everyone. Selfauthoring.com. If you're feeling down or depressed, just load it up and see how you feel. So
That's a really good one. I want to look into that. Even do that for myself. Maybe next episode, when both of us have written down like more faults, you finished it maybe, then I've just written some down, that we should go over some of them.
That'd be cool.
Next episode.
Yeah. Another thing I liked about it is there were some that I now have as faults that I wouldn't have thought of that as a fault about myself. But when I saw it in the list worded the way it was worded, I was like, wait, maybe I do, like, it's, maybe I do that. And so I checked it, and then when it like gave more explanation, I was like, oh, I totally do that. I didn't even realize, like, I never attributed that trait to myself, but now I see it. So,
like, for example,
there's a better example than this, but one of them, just to use as a little example, is one of them was phrased as, I spend too much money, and that was all it said. And if someone had normally asked me that, I would have said, well, I only spend what money is in my budget under spending, and I feel like that's not too much. And, I could have given like a justification for the money I spend. But when you have to check a checkbox and that's the only thing it says, I spend too much money, and you don't really know what that's relative to, then you're forced to, compare that to just objective, like, would it be better if I spent less money, basically. And so then I was kind of stuck on that one, and I was like, yeah, I should probably just put less money into my spendings, and like that's kind of a bad example because that wasn't a huge one that I feel like I have, but I did end up saying that was a fault when before I probably wouldn't have. So, yeah.
Interesting. That's dope. That's a really good idea. I think it is important to, make sure you know what your faults are, and that's something that like is in your mind, you're thinking about. And then even what you were saying about being able to recognize it in day-to-day stuff is so important.
And also you're scared of what happens if you don't get over it, because you'd never figured that out before, and now you know what you could become if you don't make yourself get over that fault, and it's way worse than you would have thought, having now articulated it. You know what I mean? And so now you're not only running toward how you want to be, but you're also running away from a much worse thing than you would have expected. So,
does it make you write down what it would help if you got over it, or just
it goes,
the worst case if you don't get it?
No, so it does, because that's what it does first. Actually, what it does before you even write what the bad parts are, you are going toward. It's like, if you get over this fault, and this part's in the future section, by the way, but it's like if you get over these faults, what are the benefits of getting over that? And if these effects were minimized in your life, like if you had never had this fault, where do you think you would be at now? You know what I mean? And so that's kind of like puts it into perspective. And so it's really cool, though. I would recommend it. And I like the statistics of, it doesn't show this, I just saw a video of him talking about it, but the statistics of what it did for college students who were likely to drop out and then suddenly just flipped everything around. It's probably because they had to think about their future a lot more in depth about what will turn out if they don't stick to it.
Right.
So, another thing I would recommend that's along the same vein that I wasn't even thinking about before, he also made this different website called understandmyself.com, and all it is a personality quiz. And I know that's kind of, a lot of people think those don't have much credibility, but if you look into when they formulated the Big Five personality study, it does have it's the most credible personality test, most likely. You know what I mean? It's very, very, it's got a lot of citations. It's got a lot of study behind it. I would say it's 100% credible. And so I took that personality test too. This was weeks and weeks ago though. And that's the same type of thing where it just kind of has like 100 questions you answer, and then you, from like, strongly disagree to agree. That's the type of questions they are. And then it tells you, okay, so you're out of this percentile of, like, one of them might be politeness. You're the 5th percentile in politeness. So in a room of 100 people, there would be 95 people more polite than you. And then, but the reason it's useful is it doesn't only tell you that, but then there's a paragraph that says people who are low in politeness usually do this, and they usually have these traits, and they usually, interact with people this way. And so I took that, and reading all those was really cool too, because it was like, oh dang, I was in the 1st percentile in politeness. I couldn't be less polite, basically. And I was like, dang. And so then when I read that, I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense why I'm like with the girlfriend I'm with, or why I'm with this, or why I do this thing. You know, it just kind of explains the common statistics of that.
I got a question. So why do you think that other personality quizzes or personality types from other quizzes aren't credible?
I think the thing that makes something more credible is probably how large of a sample. How do you word it? When you have more people that have taken it and then you've actually tested sample size. Yeah, that one's probably had the largest. And the reason I'm saying probably is because it's not that it's definitely had the largest sample size, and it's not definitely the most credible, but it is definitely within the top like 3 largest like structures that psychologists use to categorize like their patients in clinical psychology. And it's had a massive sample size.
That's interesting. One of the reason I ask is one of the personality things that I was getting into because of someone at my church was something called the Enneagram. And it's a personality. It's not even like a personality thing, but I guess it is a personality type. It's out of 9, so you're 1 through 9, and it's based off of your biggest fear and your biggest desire, and not in like this worldly, like my biggest desire is to own a company, but it's like the root of that, of like your biggest desire might be validation from like friends and family or something like that, and then your biggest fear might be losing relationships with people, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me learning or like going through that and trying to see like which one I am. And it's kind of cool because you have one that you are like, this is who I am. I'm a 9. I'm a peacekeeper, but I have 2 other wings, and it's the wings that I go to in emotional health and emotional unhealth. And maybe like you might find this interesting, but the one that I go to in unhealth is a challenger. So my personality type is peacekeeper. I do a lot to like try to not get angry at like different political things or in an argument. I do my best to find things that I agree with in both sides and like make sure no one gets like upset basically. But then when I'm emotionally unhealthy, I take my 8 wing and I become the challenger, who's the like opposite of that basically. And you don't always have a wing of your opposite, but that's just the one that I happen to have. And so I challenge people really head on and like directly and aggressively when I'm emotionally unhealthy. And it's just interesting seeing that, because I feel like what you were saying is like you see these little things in your daily life of like, oh, that's why I do that. That's interesting. Or like I'll notice of like, oh, I'm emotionally unhealthy right now, and that's why I got really confrontational like with that person. Which is super interesting to me.
No, yeah, I think people listening might not realize how important that is to go, to realize you have some fault or have a test claim you have a fault, but then to see it later in your life and have it stick out and go, oh, that's that thing. Because that might just seem like you could easily say, I already know what faults I have, and they stick out every time. Every time I can realize that I'm, sleeping in or playing too many video games or whatever the thing is. But there's something about knowing that it's a common problem that a lot of people have, and you're in this categorization of people that have that, and then being able to think about how to get over it and what will happen if you don't, and all of these different things. And I think that really helps a lot. I pulled up my my personality test since you were talking about yours. If you want, I can read you like the thing. Some of them are funny, like agreeableness. If you don't know what any of these, like if one of them says like conscientiousness or industriousness, if you don't know what that means, there's a little description of it. But yeah, agreeableness, I am exceptionally low. I'm in the 3rd percentile of agreeableness. So I'm very
obviously I know what agreeableness, but like in this circumstance, what is it saying? Like agreeableness when you agree with these things? Or
so agreeableness is the primary dimension of interpersonal interaction. So how well you are at interacting with other people. It has 2 aspects, though. This compassion and politeness are both under agreeableness. And so those two can be explained separately. You can scroll down and like see those ones.
And so you said you were really low on that?
Yeah, I'm a third percentile, so 97 out of 100 people, the average person, would be more agreeable than me. Compassion, I'm low. I'm in the 16th percentile. Politeness, like I said, I'm in the first percentile. Conscientiousness, moderately high, so the 69th percentile. And that's more just like consciously, like whatever I'm doing, whatever the assignment is or the job I'm trying to do or whatever, I'm very conscientiously focusing on just that, if you know what I mean. Industriousness is kind of average. Orderliness was moderately high, 76th. Extroversion was 95th percentile. And the thing I kind of like about this test too is it'll say like, because you are high in extroversion and then low in agreeableness, then this is what usually happens, or this is the type of situation that can occur, you know, things like that. And then as you're reading them, of course, I'm like, oh, I've thought of tons of times when that's happened, or, you know.
Right.
I'm high in enthusiasm. I'm very high in assertiveness, 95th percentile. Neuroticism. Neuroticism is the primary dimension of negative emotion. So it's how susceptible you are to negative emotion. So like anxiety, the same thing could happen to me and someone with high neuroticism, and I would feel way less negative emotion than that person, right? So 10th percentile of neuroticism. Withdrawal, I don't really understand. It's one of the aspects within neuroticism. Individuals with low withdrawal rarely suffer from or are impeded by anticipatory anxiety. So I don't really have anxiety when anticipating something that might be bad. So I'm low in that. Volatility is very low. Openness to experience, 71st. Intellect, 89th. Openness, moderately low. Anyway, it's really cool. It's really cool reading all of them. I would also recommend everyone do that one. I'm not just here trying to plug other people's websites, but it was fun to take
Jordan
it.
Peterson, you know.
It's Jordan, yeah. I kind of want to help him out because he's striving to be like me, you know.
Yeah, he wants to be like our podcast, and it's like, all right, whatever. Yeah. You know what? Maybe one day we'll let you be a guest on our podcast. It's fine.
One day. The last thing about anything related to this, unless you have stuff you want to talk about, is this website lets you connect your results with someone else who's taken the test, and then all of the paragraphs change to, because you have this and because your partner has this, then those relationships usually, you know, these things usually happen in them. Or it'll say stuff like, because you're low in agreeableness and your partner is high, make sure that you do these types of things, or keep this in mind in your relationship because they're like this. You know, it's like it kind of gives you almost like a guide for what happens when those two types of people pair up. It's really cool. So Trinity, that's interesting. My girlfriend Trinity also take it, and then we connected ours and we're reading them, and it was really cool. So, yeah.
Do you think we ever answered the question of if money buys happiness?
I think overall you can safely say it does not, because of the suicide rates in upper class.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say the best way to explain this to people is when you don't have money becomes everything. But then when you do have money becomes like nothing. Like you just don't think about it.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And so I think the lack of money can definitely cause unhappiness.
Yeah, if too much,
it's like whatever.
Yeah, if you're starving and stuff, of course your whole goal is going to be money. But if too much of your personality becomes trying to get money, or too much of your goals and ambition, then once you get all of it, if you do, then what else do you have to fall back on, you know, as far as goals or anything? So, yeah. You know how there's an issue with big companies or rich people paying off politicians to pass specific laws or including little things in their bill that'll help them out with like tax breaks or whatever it is?
Yep.
I was thinking about it the other day, and I realized if there's this group of people sitting there that have to write these giant, super long bills and have all of these little adjustments happen to society and to laws and stuff, but that all of them are getting paid off by, you know, like banks or pharmaceutical companies or even maybe individual people that have specific agendas. What if you could create an AI, because an AI isn't you can't really be persuaded one way or the other, right? What if you could create an AI that made the laws, and you had their number one goal be, I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe it's the pursuit of happiness to be protected among all Americans, or maybe it's the equality, as much equality as possible among everyone, or whatever it is. And that AI is what presented laws. And it could formulate, like it, obviously this would be an extremely advanced AI, nearly impossible to create right now, of course. But if you had an AI that couldn't be persuaded one way or the other with money or any financial gain or anything at all, because it's just a formula, it's just a code that's going, this law is simply what would be best for all Americans to maintain freedom or whatever it is. And that we just had to go, all right, that's the law, and we just stuck to it, and nothing could adjust it or anything. How do you think that would turn out?
I think it would turn out really poorly.
Awfully? Why is that?
Yeah.
Because
so
obviously the biggest flaw.
Program, you are choosing like a code of ethics because you're coding it to make a decision, right?
Yep.
Because it can't make decisions on its own. Like it can
base them off the code. That's it.
Yeah. And so whatever you end up programming the AI to make decisions based off of is what you'd have to agree on. And that's kind of the things that changes so much of like, okay, so what if 51% of America wanted the AI to be utilitarian?
Utilitarian?
No, utilitarian. So that is, I might have said the word wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
No, I think I mixed it with totalitarianism on accident. I think utilitarian is right. Anyway.
Yeah, but that is like what is best for the biggest group of people, which I've never had I don't agree with this type of ethic of whatever is best for the most amount of people is what you should always do. Mm-hmm. Because that can just totally disregard other people and their needs and their wants.
Yeah, that's clearly
and
not
so it's
well, what I was going to say is the biggest flaw in the whole idea is whoever is the guy who writes the original code, whoever makes the rubric that it compares everything against, obviously that is what has to be perfect for us to trust the AI at all, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the best, if obviously this was a possible scenario, I feel like the very best rubric to base it off of would be the Constitution, the original Constitution by the Founding Fathers, and the Bill of Rights and the amendments that have happened so far and everything, right? And if that, maybe if this branch of it, this AI was like a branch of the government, maybe if it was just one of the three branches or maybe a fourth branch, and it was somehow able to take every single thing into consideration, like the very lowest class, the very highest class, even the stuff that, a congressman can't really notice or think about, it's taking the whole market into consideration and everything, that would probably be the very best thing to base the original formula off of. You know what I mean? Just because that is one of the only governments, the only government in the world that instead of going, we need to try to build the perfect system, we're one of the ones that went, we have to build a system where obviously the people running it could be as dumb as us, so there has to be an easy way to check them and make sure that it's balanced and not one person can have too much power, And it's just a cool thing. But anyway, that was just an interesting idea. I was like, imagining a world where an AI is making the laws would be kind of scary in a way, because you never know for sure who's controlling the AI or anything. But I don't know. I think that'd be cool. Because what if it was a fourth branch of government and it would present stuff to like Congress or whatever, and they would look at it and go, should we pass this? Should we not? This is an interesting idea. But the problem with that is then you could just pay them off to not pass certain things or whatever. But
yeah, it's weird. I think that would probably be best case scenario is that it's like it's made to present ideas, but even at that point, anyone can technically like do that. Yeah. If they give them a platform to do it. Yeah. So
it's just cool to me.
I should just be on that platform.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think this podcast should honestly be a fourth branch of government. Just the stuff we say on here, everyone just It's a good idea. We need to strongly
It's like
consider.
both of us have such different views on different things, so it'd be like, bruh, what are they even saying? Can you guys come to an agreement?
That's a good point.
It's like, you know how you have to have like the tiebreaker, and if it's just us two and we just keep arguing about the same thing,
Endless
like,
conversations.
Hey, are you guys gonna like agree on something so you can be a part of this government? Like,
everyone's just waiting. They have to filibust until we make it an agreement.
I know, we're just holding up entire things. Like, sorry, we're still talking about it. Okay,
Be so
Sorry.
funny,
dude.
Brett.
You know what is kind of crazy? What do you think about? So now Democrats are in control of like the House, the Senate, and the presidency.
Do they have a super majority? Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Dang.
They
I
do.
think that it's
now that they won everything in Georgia, because Georgia was like the big thing in the news of
deciding
whether they're gonna go. Because if the Democrats won Georgia for, I believe, the Senate, is it the Senate the two that every state gets?
I think so. I should know more for sure, but
Yeah, dude. Considering we're the most intelligent, it's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah. I have so much more important matters to remember.
Like
That
$1
just kinda
billion
gets
deals.
pushed-
It's like
yeah,
whatever.
got pushed out.
Maybe even $1 trillion deals.
Making
at this point.
international moves, whoever the senators are, doesn't really affect me. So
Yeah, it's whatever. But that was like a huge thing in the news. Was now they have like a super majority, and not only that, but Biden has officially and legally become president elect because Congress has.
It's a lot of debate if it
270.
was legally.
Yeah, and then people
Didn't
went
it?
Super Saiyan on the whole Congress house or whatever.
They freaking busted. And have you seen any of the clips of them like busting the windows to the door and unlocking it and all that?
I haven't really watched a lot of stuff.
It's
with
crazy. I was kind of imagining like there was guards there and they kind of pushed them out the way and got into the building. But then I saw videos of them actually shattering the windows of the doors and like busting the doors in. And it's like, oh, this was actual literally banging on the doors of Congress. Like the phrase,
Yep.
the people need to bang on the door of Congress. No, it was literally breaking into the building this time. Crazy. And another thing I was talking about is I think it's a common argument that I hear all the time that the radical left are the violent ones. The radical left are they've been doing all these riots and burning buildings and stuff. But this is, I think, the easiest example of how the right genuinely can be super retarded. You know what I mean? Like,
but then
as
if you're
far as
on the
violence.
right, then you can blame this on the left. Because have you seen? So I was talking to Damien, and I don't really know how much of this I believe, because I'm not really like a conspiracy person. But he was talking about how it's literally been proven that there were Antifa members being bussed in wearing Donald Trump.
Yeah,
like,
I saw
Donald Trump stuff.
I saw that. There's a news article saying that Antifa members went in and they were like wearing MAGA hats and they would wear them backwards to signify to other Antifa members like who's on the team, and then they were trying to turn the protest into a riot, so that the right also had a bad rap like that. That was supposedly the claim, but
Yep.
I don't know if there's a way. I think that some of the, of course, this could also be faked, but there was like pictures of, some guy in a MAGA hat standing in Congress like, oh, we broke in. And then it shows a clip from an Antifa rally of that same person, it's like zoomed up to their face. Look, that guy is an Antifa member. He was over here in this riot doing this. And so I've seen, I think, 2 of those with 2 different people. But who knows, dude? I don't know. That could be faked
so
easily.
weird.
There's so much going on.
What if they used to be Antifa and now they're pro-Trump? Like, what if the political spectrum isn't even just a spectrum, like a straight line?
It's a
Maybe it's a
circle.
circle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you go so much
so-
Antifa,
Yeah.
you flipped it.
He was
Right.
so far left, that he literally went into extremist right.
Yeah, it's like it's not the left and the right. I almost just
circle.
re-explained the entire thing you said, but
Yep.
it's really funny. You go so far left that you become a Nazi.
Yeah. Dude, kind of makes sense, honestly.
It's
But
too much crossover.
Dude, I feel like there is a little bit too much blend. Like, extremist left and extremist rights are like the exact same worldview, but with like a couple words changed, like a couple couple tiny things change.
Well, I think this is
like
gonna be
how they act, basically. Like that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the way that they do things are so similar,
Mhm.
and then they just like a little tiny difference in beliefs.
Yeah.
Even if that one tiny difference could end up being like huge,
A
but
major thing, yeah. This is what I heard. Did the Supreme Court reject to take the case that the Trump presidency was trying to present about the Biden presidency cheating? Because I heard that the Trump campaign was trying to bring it to court with all their evidence, and they supposedly had all this evidence he cheated, and they were trying to bring it to court, and then the Supreme Court rejected to take the case. And so they didn't even take the case. They didn't look at the evidence. They just went, we're not taking the case. And since there was nothing else the Trump campaign could do, by default, Biden won. Did you hear anything about the Supreme Court not taking the case?
I really don't look into it, dude. Politics is not important to me.
Yeah, a lot of anything I know about it is kind of like hearsay or memes making jokes about it and me Googling what actually happened and things like that. But who knows? That's what I thought. That's what I was pretty sure had happened, that they never even looked at the evidence and they didn't take the case. And then obviously that led me to go, oh, well, it could have easily, then he probably did cheat, you know? And the reason they didn't take the case is because the DNC could have been paying them off to not take the case. But it's like,
well, yeah. Why did the protest start?
Well, the protest started because Trump said, he was on national TV and he goes, let's march on the Capitol. Let's like show up. Let's everyone show up and as a protest and make like a big deal and basically try to see if that makes any difference to make them either take the case or to, you know, make someone look at the evidence that he cheated and stuff like that. Like, because this was a fraudulent election. It was a fraud. This election was a total cheat. We won fair and square, and they cheated. You know what I mean? And so he said that, and so he incited the protest to start. And then during the protest at one point, he tweeted, guys, we don't want this to get violent. No violence. We're just protesting, blah, blah, blah. And then I guess something he tweeted made everyone think he was making matters worse. And so Twitter banned his account for 10 hours and said if he doesn't delete those tweets, they're banning him for life, which I think is a major, major infringement on free speech.
But it's a private company.
I know, but there has to be some sort of amendment or something for when companies get big enough. You know what I mean?
Yep. I would agree. I'm in that same camp because that's the... Dude, this is even a throwback to when the FCC, what was it? I can't remember like the exact term, but it was basically like, is the internet like an open domain, or can internet providers charge more for like certain sites? Yeah, like censor what you have access to on the internet, basically.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing because I feel like matters like that are so different than the matters that people even thought could arise when they created the Constitution. And I think obviously the principles of free speech are what needs to be protected more so than anything else. But I also have, on the other hand, I feel like if it's a private company and you started that company and you're the CEO, and then you're sitting there one day and suddenly you're forced to do something with your company, you know, I'd go, whoa, now you're screwing over my freedom in this way. And I want to do this to my company, you know? So it's like this, it's a very complicated situation. I had arguments. I think that was one of the things that I distinctly remember my opinion changing on like 3 times in the course of like a month, because I was talking to someone at first. I go, well, wouldn't this be better? And then they gave all their evidence and I go, oh, that makes way more sense. It changed my mind. And then I brought that to someone else and then they gave me more evidence for the original point. And I switched like 3 times. I was like, bro, I don't know. It's such a complicated, weird situation.
It is honestly a really complicated thing because like the full capitalist libertarian would say Twitter can do whatever they want, and then the market is going to create another platform that they are agreed upon until that platform does something else, and then another thing will rise up and another thing. Yep. Because I think genuinely, if Twitter does ban Trump, and let's say they just like went crazy and banned like every right-leaning person, okay, Twitter would not be the big platform anymore, because it's almost like this balance that they have to play of like, okay, we can't ban too many people or else another platform is just going to literally take our place.
But I think
I've also already seen conservatives make social media platforms that are based on freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, but I don't think that there's room in the marketplace for that right now until one of these big companies really messes up.
Yeah, like downsizes or disappears or whatever. Yeah. It's whack. And I think I do feel myself leaning a little bit more toward Twitter being able to ban Trump, even though I said, it's infringement of freedom of speech in a way, but Trump, if he's only built his following to listen to him on this one service that's a private company, then it's his fault if suddenly they change something he doesn't like, right? He shouldn't have had all of his audience on this one platform then. But anyway, the whole thing, whack, Democratic supermajority, I feel like I can expect, even like the Biden presidency has said, yes, we're going to try to take like AR-15 guns, and we're going to try to do buybacks. And like there's all these little things that I don't like that I've heard them claim they're going to do. And so, of course, I hope those don't happen. But I don't know. I feel like whatever damage he does or whatever changes he makes will kind of balance itself back out in 4 years from now. You know what I mean? People will flip back to the right. And so it's kind of...
I agree.
I feel like the stock market is going to... I feel like my stocks are going to go down a bit in the next like 6 or 8 months, probably pretty drastically. I feel like COVID shutdowns are going to extend. This month has been the first time I've gotten really irritated at stuff being closed for COVID. I literally didn't care for the whole time. I was like, everything that shut down, I didn't really care about or use, and it didn't change my life, and I got a raise at work, and I was just like, COVID really isn't affecting me, cool. And now this last month, there's been some stuff I wanted to do that I couldn't because it was shut down again, and I was actually like, that's kind of irritating. And then, we're extending it, and I was like, this is getting pretty irritating.
What was the stuff?
It was the YMCA gym. It was the gym. They didn't, maybe it was because wasn't trying to go to the gym this whole time it's been shut down for COVID. And then I was finally like, okay, I want to go. It was the last week since the last podcast. I was like, all right, I'm going to try to go to the gym. And it's closed. So I still haven't been to the gym. But I was like, fudge, that's so frustrating. But there's this other gym in town that is still open for it, which I don't really understand how, if it's coming from the top, if this order is coming from the top, how one gym is open and one isn't. I don't really understand how that's working, but they're pretty dang expensive, so I don't know if it's worth it to pay for a membership there. It's a gym that's open 24 hours a day, which is kind of cool.
That is dope. Yeah, I just got my first membership to a gym, and then like looking on the website, I'm trying to like register to a bunch because I can now register to any gym for free because I'm on Trader Joe's insurance.
Their insurance includes gym memberships?
Yeah, not only that, but they also gave me a Fitbit.
What the fudge? That's dope. What the heck? That's pretty cool. And, maybe it was a sign a hint that you're too fat.
Yeah.
Could have been.
They specifically went to me, HR, the CEO of Trader Joe's,
straight
called me,
to you.
He's like, all right,
we'll
Danny,
pay for your
they call me
gym
Danny
membership?
at Trader Joe's, right? Mm-hmm. You're really obese. You need to lose weight, and we'll even pay you for your gym membership.
Yeah. He said, I personally bought you a Fitbit, and the company, I'm making them pay for your gym. Ugh, that's embarrassing, dude.
Yeah,
that's awkward. Bad if I were you. But that's really cool. I've never heard of gym membership being on insurance. That's crazy.
Yeah, not only that, but I can get 60-minute massages that usually cost at least $60. That's kind of like a standard rate for a massage.
Not with a happy
for like
ending.
1 hour.
That's like $90 usually.
Yeah, at least for sure.
Yeah.
But I can get an hour-long massage for $20.
Dang, dude. Is there a way you can
weird.
give that to a friend? Can I use your ID? Can I say I'm Daniel? Give me a massage. I lost weight and grew facial hair.
I mean, if you look
and got shorter.
Yeah, if you look enough at me.
Yeah.
Maybe fake ID.
Dude, that'd be a funny video to make for the comedy channel, to go around to businesses and see where you can pass off as someone else. Like get someone's ID that's just totally different and just see where you can convince them that that's you.
But like, what if you tried to buy alcohol? Like, how would you explain that?
Like, let's say you brought in my ID, right? And they go, you're old enough, but this isn't you. You go, no, I know, I get that everywhere. That is me. I gained a lot of weight, and I don't have facial hair right now, and I keep getting that, but I promise that's me. Just look at them. Just see what they say. I mean, what if I also gave you pictures of like, no, actually that might not. I was going to say pictures of me without facial hair or long hair, like looking different, but that actually might make it worse. So I don't know. That'd be funny though, because worst case scenario, they kick you out. I don't really think they're going to. Do you think they would call the police?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it'd be funny. That'd be really funny. We should do it. What do you think?
What I was thinking is that you would go in and then like have my ID, because in this scenario, I feel like you would just be like, "Oh, my bad." Like if they brought it up, then you'd be like, "Oh, my bad. I gave you the wrong ID," and then hand them your actual ID.
Oh,
like that kind of thing.
They're like, "Why do you have someone else's ID?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, when I worked at Nissan,
this was the funniest thing. Okay, so to explain this, me, Andre, and Jarrett were getting coffee, and I pulled out my wallet to pay because we went through the drive-thru, so only like one person hands the card, right?
Yep.
And I opened my wallet, and in my wallet is a picture of Fern. I have this little Polaroid, right?
Yep.
And I was like, Andre, wouldn't it be funny if you handed this picture instead of a card, right? And he's like,
was he driving?
Yeah. He actually drove my car. He's the first non-Daniel to drive my car.
Dang.
Yeah, anyways. So he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And I was like, wait, really? He's like, yeah, I'll do it. And so he hands the lady, he's like, yeah, can I have your card? He hands the lady just this picture. It was just so awkward because she just like looks at it and she's like, this isn't a credit card. And he's like, oh, okay, my bad. And then hands her a credit card. It was like, bruh, it was such a dumb joke.
It's not that bad. It seems like you played it off.
Yeah.
Bruh, it would have been
because like clearly they know that we're messing with them. No one accidentally hands a Polaroid instead of a credit.
But for him to act like he actually did mess up and just go, oh, my bad. Makes it more.
And then it was also really awkward. They didn't ask us for any tips, even though at Beans and Brews you do give tips, right? They didn't have any time that we were supposed to do it. They didn't like hand us a tablet where you'd write down like gratuity or whatever. And so instead of driving away, they just like, thank you. And then they closed the window. Andre spent time trying to get cash underneath the window. So like slide it underneath.
That's really
like,
whack.
It was so weird, dude. The weirdest thing ever.
Dude, speaking of tips, I had the most expensive meal of my life this last
I want
week.
to hear about that.
The tip was $45, and that was a 15% tip. Because the total bill was $300. It was $299 something, $299.95 or something. It was right at $300, and so I did the math to give a 15% tip, and I was like, ooh, $45 tip. That's more than a lot of meals I've had, including tip. And I was just like, dang, dude. But it was definitely the best steak I've ever had, and it was maybe the nicest restaurant. There's one other restaurant that might have been nicer, but it was probably the nicest restaurant I've ever been in. But it's in Boise, Idaho. It's called Chandler's, and it's steak and seafood. That's what they specialize, just steak and seafood. But it's super dark in there. It's like super, super dim. And then there's a live piano guy that plays piano the whole time. And then, like the etiquette and the way that all the waiters like walk around, and the type of questions they ask. And they anytime, like if you're drinking wine or something, they'll come up back to your table and pick up the little thing with wine and refill your cup and then set it back on the table and walk away. And then at one point the manager came up and was like, hey guys, is everything going well? Can I get anything for you? And it's like, I remembered, I think Trinity said it actually. She's like, there's some restaurants where the manager will talk to every customer at least once during the meal in case they want to say anything or have a, like recommendation for the restaurant or anything. And like I saw him getting wine for some tables instead of the waiter and different things. It was weird, dude. It was really cool though. I loved it. It was really good food. But my plate alone, not counting drinks or the tip, just my plate was $95.
And was it just a steak? Like, what was it?
It was a bullseye ribeye. And that's what I intentionally got, the most expensive thing on the menu. And It was the bullseye ribeye, and then it was just a big circular like cylinder of meat that was pretty fat. It was probably
Cylinder or sphere?
no, it was like
cylinder.
it was a cylinder shape of ribeye steak that was probably 3 inches tall, and then it came with asparagus on the side and a tomato with some topping on it. I assumed you were supposed to mix it with it, and then later he came, like right after I got it, he came with this little secondary plate that had these 4 little sauces on it with individual spoons and stuff, and he comes up and goes, so this sauce is called the blah 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 and it tastes like this sauce is called this, tastes like this, and it was all just different types of steak sauces for both of our steak. So that was pretty cool. But dude, yeah, it was cool. It was an interesting thing. And then my drinks were another $45, and then the tip was $45, and then Trinity's plate was another $99. I was just like, ooh, dude, it's crazy.
Hey, what did she get?
She got one that didn't say the price on the menu. That's why, like, mine was the most expensive thing where it actually said the price. Hers said MP, and I have no idea what that stands for. But when the receipt came, I could see that hers was $95. It was called seafood. It was like seafood platter or seafood something, and it had a big thing of lobster, and then it had, I had crab or some other kind of seafood, I can't remember, and then it also had a ribeye, the same exact type of steak I had, just a smaller one. It was like 6 ounce instead of 10 ounce or something, and I was just like, dang, dude, dang. Hers came with fries too, but it was cool, dude. It was a weird. At one point, I ordered something and said the name wrong, and so there's this type of wine, right, called Cabernet Sauvignon, and then it had 3 subcategories that were all Cabernet Sauvignon, but they were from different like vineyards or different dates or whatever under it. And she comes and I just wanted red wine, and I go, can I get Cabernet Sauvignon? Because it has the T at the end, right? And I didn't specify which one I wanted. I just said the category name. And that's all I said. And then she goes, yes. And she kind of looked confused and walks off. And then I was like, and I get confused. Trinity's like, it's Cabernet. I was like, oh, I knew that. I'm retarded. And then she comes back and gives me a drink. And then later I wanted a second one. And I go, wait, which one did she give me? Because that's when I noticed there were 3 under the category. And I go, which one did you give me? And she goes, that one. And I go, okay, can I get that one now? She's like, yeah. But it was just like so weird. There was like different little like etiquette things I felt like I didn't know and things like that. It was funny though.
That's actually cool. Being in like, yeah, because I feel like you're experiencing something that if you didn't go to an expensive restaurant, you would never experience that.
Yeah. No, it was weird how many little things there were that, like, I think it was weird that I had the thing you wipe your hands with up on the table instead of on my lap and, like, things like that. And then, after the meal, dude, this was my favorite part. This guy walks up with a bowl and tongs, and he pulls out a wet rag and hands me a wet rag with tongs to wash my hands and face. And it was, like, really hot water. And I was like, oh, this feels so good, dude. This is dope. And then he gave one to Trinity and stuff. And I was like, I've never even heard of that. I didn't know that was a thing at a restaurant. Yeah. These like hot, wet rags. I was like, dang, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah. The closest thing that I've been to like that was I went to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, which is another like super expensive. It's specifically steak. And it was me and my parents. So my brother and sister, they got like a senior trip, and basically my parents were like, we can't take you on a trip. And I was like, that's fine. You guys should just take me out to the nicest, like a 5-star restaurant in Salt Lake City. Like, okay. So they ended up taking me to Ruth's Chris, and it was super dope. I think the total bill was like $260, I think, for all of us, and we didn't even get drinks. So that was like no wine even.
Dang.
But there was a lot of weird things like the valet stuff. Them taking your coat was interesting to me because I've never seen that. Like, that was the first time that's happened at a restaurant, because usually you walk in and you sit down, maybe you put your coat on your chair or whatever. But then like someone coming up, taking your coat, and then as you're leaving, they find all 3 of your exact coats and give it to you. And like,
that's pretty cool.
That kind of stuff, dude. Yeah, that's a really cool experience.
Yeah, I
love that.
It makes me wonder how much stuff there is in these super high-class lifestyles, like not even necessarily restaurants, that you have no idea ever happened, but there are a commonality in those types of, like in that rank of place. Like, I don't know, one might be You know, like I'm sure lots of people have been to hotels but never had valet parking. Like that's an example, right? Yeah, that type of stuff. Like there could be so many weird things like that where you go to do something normal. Like you see in movies, people will go to a bathroom and there's a guy in the bathroom that works in the bathroom that'll give you like the soap that you want to use, and he'll take your coat. Have you seen that guy in movies?
Mm-hmm.
And like the bathroom waiter, butler guy. I've never been to a place like that, but who knows how many like regular things there are that are just way different once you get high class.
Can you just like imagine like living that lifestyle so much that you're weird, like it feels weird walking into like a hotel bathroom and it's like, where's the person? Like where's the
dude?
Where's the dude here? Like, being confused about it, you're like, what the heck?
Where's the guy?
Yeah,
you'd
where's my
look like
hot
such an
towel
idiot.
after the meal? Like,
dude, I feel like it's sad because I feel like there probably are people like that. There has to be some people like that if they went to McDonald's, they would just be like, what's going on? Where's the actual restaurant? You know? So what is this, a waiting room? They would just be all confused about it. It's crazy.
Dude, that is weird. Because I feel like at this point in my life, I would never be out of touch with like how I live. It's weird to say like how we live, like the poor people, right? But dude, it would be so weird because I feel like as I've gotten older, I realize that there's like rich people, right? Don't worry about money. They go on vacations 4 times a year. That's what I said. They have like a nice car. And then there's like another level where it's like literally all of those things are so beneath them. Right?
Yeah.
Where it's this totally different level of those people get first class tickets and they drive a really nice car, maybe like a Lamborghini. But then there's a whole nother level that it's like, I drive a $2 million car. I have a private jet with people working on the jet and I'm flying to my island. Like it's a whole nother level of wealth.
Yeah. Something I heard recently
crazy, dude.
If you make $35,000 a year, which is $16 an hour if you were working 40 hours a week, you're in the top 1% worldwide. You top 1%. In America, the top 1% has 50% of the nation's money. But the top 1% of that 1% has 50% of their money, and the top 1% of that 50% has... the top 1% of that 1% has 50% of their money. And that it keeps going to where it's this, the rich grow richer, but in this extremely, like, exponential way. Yep. That's just like...
Yeah, because I think, like, to be in the 1%, you're, like, a multimillionaire, right?
In America? I don't know. Something like that. I would have to...
Yeah, it's not even that crazy. Because, like,
it's not that much.
Where it's very like obtainable.
Yeah, you have plenty of teachers and construction workers whose net worth is like $3 million because you're counting their house and their investments.
They're technically in the 1%, which is crazy. But then
that
thinking
1%
at the different level of like 1%, it's unbelievable because the lifestyle change after a certain point is just insane.
Yeah,
it almost seems like there's this huge divide between like
billionaires,
100 millionaires, like something like that, and then there's everyone that's like $1 billion plus. Like this gap.
Yeah, there's a massive. There might even be. What if there's a bigger divide between like the $5 million range and the poverty level? Like that, there's that divide. But what if there's a way bigger divide between the $5 million range and the $1 billion range? I mean, there is that is bigger as far as the amount of money. That's a bigger. But as far as the lifestyle, it probably is just retarded.
Yeah, because I mean, think about the lifestyle of someone that has a net worth of like $5 million. Probably not that different.
Yeah, it's
right?
like it's a nicer house.
Chauffeured, right? They probably do have maids. They probably don't really clean that much, but it's like weird. But then someone that has like $1 billion does probably so little things for themselves.
Yeah, they probably own houses they've never been to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dude, it's so
gotta be
weird to think
crazy.
about.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to think about because it's for me it makes me feel like if you try hard enough and you keep going, that there isn't an end to the lifestyle you could achieve. Like it gets to where it just gets more and more ridiculous, and you don't really cap out. You know, you get to where you have a whole island to yourself or something. I don't know, where you haven't driven a car in 13 years because limos bring you anywhere you want to go.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's so weird. One Reddit post that I saw like maybe 2 years ago, they were talking about people that have worked for billionaires. What's the biggest difference you've seen in their life? And the one thing that I remember that's always stood out to me was this guy was talking about he was like a nanny for this like multi-billionaires kids. And so he would basically like every day he'd drive, take care of the kids in this like crazy mansion basically. And then but he said one of the weirdest things for him was the stuff that concerns average people, like normal day-to-day, like salt of the earth people, does not concern them. They're at a whole nother level of concerns and stuff that like takes up mental space in their life. It's like just different things, which he didn't really go into it that much, but that was probably the most fascinating thing to me. Because like, what if to some extent, right, like they're gonna care who like the president is, right? Because it might affect how much money they're making or like the tax or whatever. But I wonder what he really meant of the stuff that concerns us doesn't concern them. Like it's literally like a different world is what he was saying.
Yeah,
it's
an
like
entirely
they lived on
different.
like a different planet.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it has to be that way because if you were, I don't know, like let's imagine that you're probably thinking, okay, I need to be in Brazil for this event in like 19 hours, and I have to be there because I'm a keynote speaker or I'm a whatever, right? And so he's probably thinking about, he's calling his agent, did you book me the plane ticket? When does the plane leave? You know, have you told my chauffeur when I need to be at the airport? You know, things like that. And he's thinking about that type of stuff to where if someone like were to, I don't know, drive their car into his other car or smash his car or something, it would be like, he probably wouldn't have to do anything because he'd have an accountant that would go, oh, I'll call the insurance company and I'll call that guy's, you know, do all of it. He doesn't have to do it. There's no point in thinking about it. A cool thing that I heard recently is someone was interviewing, I think it was Bugatti. It was either Bugatti or Ferrari. Someone there saying, why don't you have TV commercials? Because they have a distinct lack of commercials for their cars, unlike like Lamborghini and some of these other nice companies. And their response was because our audience doesn't watch TV. And it was like this message of like the people who can afford these cars don't watch TV. They don't. They're the only way to get to afford this product is to have all your time spent making money or you know.
I don't even think it's that, but I think they probably, because like I kind of doubt that really rich people, their entertainment is sitting down on the couch and watching cable or watching Netflix. There's probably some other level of my entertainment is
it's probably choosing which side girl to go sleep with that night.
or going to like a live music thing. Like that's like, or like I'm going to an orchestra. I'm going to an opera. Like just weird stuff like that of, it's
weird.
It's so funky. What's up?
I was going to say a good example of that, I feel like being on like a different planet is, I've told you this story before, but I've never said it on a video. So, I think it was either Drake, the musician, it was either Drake or Kanye West. Maybe it was Kanye West, but a couple years ago he went out and went to a restaurant to celebrate like some new line of whiskey or something he made. And he was celebrating with tons of his friends at some really nice restaurant in like New York. And he paid for everyone's food and everyone's drinks that day. And then when he left, the ticket, the receipt, somehow, I don't know if a picture of it leaked onto the internet or if the waiter just talked about it or something, but his ticket that night or his bill was $91,000 because he was getting the top shelf everything, right? I'm sure. And who knows how long they could have spent 6 hours there. I don't know. But I listen to the Dave Ramsey show now and then, who's just a financial money advisor guy. And so people were calling him one day saying, look how much money he spent on this thing. They're just calling him to get his opinion on it because he's a money guy, right? Anyway, and he said, okay, so people were freaking out about this, and I'm sure they wanted me to get all mad at him and say that's a ridiculous amount of money. You could have invested that, or you could have given that to a charity or something. But I looked up how much money he made last year, and he made so many millions of dollars that year that one ticket was the same as a doctor who, or not a doctor, but he equated it to like someone who makes $70,000 a year, spending like $150 on dinner. He said that was the ratio. It was such an insignificant small amount that it was like, it honestly could have been more and it still wouldn't be offensive or out of line. It was not that much at all for him. Like, he's on a different level as you guys. You have to understand that. It's not the same at all. And it was like, I think, a shocking response to everyone, like, whoa, that's a thing? True. You can get to that level? Yeah. It's just crazy.
Dude, that's so crazy. One day, dude. Probably like a couple years,
Yeah, it won't be much longer. My projections
should that be on our bucket list, is to like get like $1 more than that ticket? Like, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure there's been higher tickets at
oh, I'm sure there
stores.
has.
Like what's that one guy? Shaquille O'Neal has the record for the most amount of money spent at Walmart in one trip. He spent like $40,000 or $70,000. It was either $40,000 or $70,000.
Didn't he buy like everything in the store or something?
I don't know. It was
I feel like that's what he did. He walked in. And he's like, I'm going to buy everything in the store. It was something weird like that.
Yeah, it's really weird. I think that you and I have had disagreements about this. Do you think? I think we still disagree, but I've always talked about how what really matters as far as like how much you should feel obligated to donate or how much you shouldn't spend has to do with the ratio of money you make. Like, donating 20% of your income is a really cool, really decent, good amount.
I don't think we've had disagreements on this.
I've just heard you say I don't think it's a ratio thing. Maybe I'm confusing me with someone else. But yeah, my point though is if you made $100 million and donated like $10 million to charity that year, I feel like, or let's say I spent $10 million on one car. There's a lot of people that would go, that's wasteful, because if you had bought a $2 million or even a $80,000 car, it's still going to get you to point A to point B, and that extra $9 million could have changed so many people's lives. You could have fed, a family of 4 for like 30 years, and, all of these different things you could have done with that money that was wasteful to buy a $10 million car. You know what I mean? You don't disagree with that?
So, I mean, to a certain extent, wasteful, but then wasteful is different than like giving, because like giving 10%, it doesn't change on how much money you make, right? Like, you're giving 10%. I think that's fine. But like wasteful, because I feel like maybe the only conversation that this got brought up is we briefly talked about like the Ray-Bans or something that you bought. Was this the conversation we were talking about, like that? And which, I mean, even then I didn't say that it was bad that you bought the Ray-Bans.
I don't maybe I could be confusing it with someone else who said I just remember they're saying it's not. Maybe it was my dad, actually. I kind of remember this. He was insulting Teslas or something, and the whole conversation got to him saying it's not a ratio thing, it's an amount of money thing. Once it hits X amount of money, then it's wasteful if it's spent on a car or something like that. And I was like, I just think that's genuinely retarded. I have this weird sense of people who are multimillionaires. They've done some service that has either helped or entertained more people than people that make less money than them. And it's a general rule. Of course, there's exceptions, but that's kind of generally how it is. Like, Bill Gates is a billionaire because he invented, he started Microsoft and started all these things that have definitely helped more people than someone who has less money than him. And it's just, that's what it seems like, that at least. So there's a weird.
I don't think it's a like amount of money thing, but I definitely think you can be very wasteful at that level of not caring if your money is spent well. Yeah. Because I don't have a problem with a billionaire or a multimillionaire buying a $2 million Bugatti Chiron, right? It's like, whatever. I don't care. But if they're wasting money is different, because that might seem like a waste because it gets point A to point B, but I don't really think that's the right way to look at it, because I also don't have a problem with like people spending a ton of money on like art, right? Like buying Mona Lisa for like $30 million or whatever. Like, I don't have an issue with that because that can be like very meaningful. But I do think wasteful, you can still be very wasteful of money. And I think poor people are wasteful of money as well.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you were saying earlier about people to like at a certain level are in a different world of their thoughts and their concerns. I can't remember if it was Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. I think it was Steve Jobs, but he had his closet of clothes was all the same clothes. It was the same shirt and the same pants and the same socks and the same shoes. He had no variation or variety in his clothes. The only reason he had more than one set is obviously for stuff to be in the laundry. He could keep wearing that one set of clothes. And people asked him, like, it was a famous quote where he said, so that it's one less decision I have to make every day. One less decision I have to make. And a lot of people were like, that's so stupid. You know, a lot of people were saying, why is that? How is that a decision at all? You just, you know, even if your clothes were different, just grab whatever's in front or something, you know? And then the reason I even know that quote is because it was a different rich person that was getting interviewed, and they ended up saying, I used to think that was a really stupid quote that he said, one less decision a day, but now I 100% get it, because at a different point, Steve Jobs has said, I only make one important decision every day. So he makes lots of decisions every day, and he wants to minimize those, so he made his clothes the same. But the important decisions that affect his relationship or his family or his company, he only would make one important decision a day. And when someone came to him with another big problem, he would say, give me till next week or give me till 3 days from now. And then he would have his questions that he was answering queued up. Per day, I'm going to answer this question this day, I'm going to answer this question this day. And it was so that he could think, he had enough time and brain power to think about that one question, like, in entirety. And it's so weird, because no one, you know, I'm sure no one that has less net worth is doing that type of stuff. No one's thinking about how many decisions they have to make a day or trying to minimize them. You know, it's just weird.
I mean, I have heard people, like, that's a very common thing in, like, the minimalist community, is having the same clothes.
But it's not, is it to preserve brain power for some giant bigger decision though? I think that's where it's
but even that is weird. That's just one, like, I get it, like, that's a rule that he lives by of, like, I'm gonna do this, but that's a weird one.
It's kind of anecdotal. It's not that every billionaire does that. Anyway, that was a big money portion.
Should we go on to things that we highly recommend? You already recommended two things.
Yeah, I recommended understandmyself.com and selfauthoring.com. Understand Myself is $9.95. It costs $10 to take that test. And Understand Myself is usually $29.95, but it might still be half off, where you can buy two of them for $29.95, just so you know. So you can either buy one or two codes, but I ended up buying two for that, but I don't know if it's like it was a holiday sale, so I don't know if the holiday sale is still up. But yeah, do those. I recommend both of those things highly and greatly. So, what do you recommend?
I got you. I got maybe a weird one. I highly recommend being able to make yourself a meal that is like top 1% of meals you've ever had. Being able to and knowing how to do that is really important.
Making a meal that's just incredibly good, one of the best meals you've ever had.
Yep. Because I have like a go-to thing that I'm actually going to make tonight that literally to me is one of the best things I've ever eaten. So good.
Dang. That's cool. I cooked something for the first time since our last podcast.
Did you really?
Yeah. I've cooked, obviously I've cooked macaroni before, like basic stuff. I don't know if you'd count that super basic stuff. But this was the first, like, definitely way more complicated than anything I had made. And I specifically went to Trinity. She was asleep, and I woke her up and said, you need to teach me how to make a casserole. So let's go to the store. Let's buy what we need for the casserole, and then you're going to teach me how to make it, and we're going to make the whole thing. And so this was somewhat in preparation for me making you a casserole at some point, some bomb casserole, right? So never made a casserole, and we went and bought the stuff, and the only thing she did is she preheated the oven at one point. So I technically didn't do that tiny step, but I've preheated ovens lots of times. But every single other thing I put on there and I made and everything. And it was a lot of steps. I think one of the reasons
Did you just follow a recipe?
It was just in her brain. We didn't specifically look at one. She just knew. She knows how to cook tons of stuff. But yeah, she's like, just do this, now mix this, now heat up this. Like at one point I was heating up and mixing mayonnaise and cheese while it was over a stove, getting heated. And I had never done that. I've never even warmed up mayonnaise. I was like, this is really weird, hot mayonnaise, what the heck? And like just different little things like that I had never done before. But it had tuna, noodles, and broccoli in a casserole, and then like cheese and cream and all this different stuff.
Tuna casserole.
Tuna casserole, yeah. It was. I thought it was pretty good. I don't know. I don't think that's the one I will do for you for a bomb casserole. I kind of want more ingredients and different things like that. But and also it's got to get to where I remember how to do it myself, right? Like I memorize the whole thing. I do the whole thing. But
it would be even cooler if you made up the recipe.
Oof, that would be cooler, but I don't think I know enough about like the actual physics of how food works under certain temperatures and
it's not even that, but I'm saying like there's so many things. Like my sister made a recipe, right? And then I basically asked all the ingredients that she used, and I was like, oh, okay, I got it. And then I just changed a couple of things of like, I don't really want that vegetable in my prime amazing pasta sauce that I want. I don't want this vegetable, I don't want this vegetable, and I want this cheese instead of that cheese.
But the only way you could have done that, though, is having at least a basic understanding of cooking in general, right? Like, just for the audience.
You could do that.
Yeah, for the audience to specify, the reason one of Daniel's goals for me was to make him a casserole is because my whole life I've avoided cooking at almost all costs, and I hate cooking, and everything about it just bothers me. I love food. I feel passionate even about the taste of food, but dude, the process of cooking, every time I've gotten close to cooking, I go, having this food wasn't worth the time I just spent cooking. It's just almost never worth the time. It's great food, but the whole time I'm like, dude, I could be doing this other thing. This is crazy how stupid this is, spending all this time mixing all this stuff or doing whatever it is. I just don't like doing it. But I have to this year, though. I have to learn, and I'm going to learn.
That's so weird to me. That is just a different life, because I've lived on my own, right, for 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's literally a necessity. And for me to say that it's not worth it would mean that it would be worth it to buy pre-made stuff from the store or to get like DoorDash or go to a fast food place or a restaurant.
It's probably important to make the distinction, though, that I will go unhealthy amounts of time without eating. I will have like one meal and 2 cups of coffee in an entire day. I've done that hundreds of times. And the one meal was because like someone got home that was cooking dinner. And I went, yeah, I'll have a bowl and I'll eat once. And I feel like there's got to be a different approach to hunger that you and I have. You know what I mean? I hate that we have to eat too. It's like so frustrating and stupid to me that humans have to eat and have to sleep. It's such a stupid thing to say, but it just feels inefficient, dude. There's got to be a way at some point to just take a couple pills and not eat ever again. Just take some pills once a day. So much better. But anyway, yeah.
It's a weird one. Okay. That's what I highly recommend. That's what you highly recommend. Those 2 things.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Maximum Intelligence.
Yep.
Our comedy.
Off.
Dude,
it's crazy.
I subscribed to our channel with 4 different channels that I have, and it only says we have 2 less than that. And I'm really confused. 2 less than the number we should based on other notifications of other people subscribing, if that makes sense. So some of them didn't count for some reason. But anyway.
Yeah, it's okay. It doesn't even matter in like the millions.
Doesn't matter. Long run. But our comedy channel, our live action comedy channel, things like sketches or vlogs, is called Flop Slap. And then our gaming channel is called Slop Flap. Daniel has not been on that one yet, I don't think. You were for a second. But yeah. All right. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.
Bye.